All right, everybody, it's about 6 o'clock, so I'm going to get started with the presentation. I want to thank everybody for coming, as usual. It's very important that people show up and voice their opinions, so thanks again for coming. So before I talk about what we might do, I feel like it's always important to discuss real briefly. I know everybody here is probably very familiar with this, but what you would have exactly at Sandy Beach. Again, incredible resource, this park in the mobile home community nearby, Rotary Park, the whole area. You know, there's just so many things to offer to the community when they come to this area, and we want to try and maintain, you know, all these various uses with the plan going forward. A brief list of the issues that Sandy Beach has that kind of spurred the master plan that led to the desire to even change the boat launch. Number one, or the original one, was that the utilities in the mobile home community are in need of replacement. And when you started taking a look into that, it started to become kind of expensive, and then do you want to put them back exactly how they are? Is there anything different or better that we could do there? The existing parking lot is deteriorating from age and lack of stormwater drainage. There's just pretty much no stormwater inlets anywhere. There is a basin, but most of the water doesn't get to it. The existing restaurant building needs to be replaced, and again, I want to stress why we use the word needs is because many people have told us that having a restaurant or a bar type facility down there is very important kind of experience component of the beach, and the existing structure has a lot of issues with it structurally, code issues and things like that, and so from that perspective, it needs to be replaced. I mean, theoretically, you could tear it down and not replace it, but we've heard quite strongly that it was an important part down there. Additional parking stalls are desired for busy weekends. City hears quite a bit that there's, you know, they run out of parking in the lot. I've heard from residents many times, including just a few minutes ago, that people are parking all over the streets and it's hard to get out and drive around down there. So we're trying to increase parking. And then the existing boat launch bisects the beach and poses a safety concern. What we mean by that is it's very close to the main swimming area. People launching their boats have to drive past and across right where everybody's trying to come to the gatehouse and pay their beach fees, and it's just not the best situation. The beach and the restroom that people are supposed to use from the beach are on opposite sides of the boat launch. It's just not the best situation, so we were looking for, I guess, better options there. I've also included here a Sandy Beach redevelopment timeline. This slide is super dense. It's kind of that way on purpose. The point is that this has been in the works for 3.5 years now, including a number of times that it was on the city council agenda, various levels of approval. The first one going back to August 2016. The council approved a feasibility study for that restaurant, bar, entertainment, you know, do you want to have like a banquet type facility? That kind of feasibility study was going way back to August 2016. And then there was a number of other times, I don't want to read the whole slide, where it was on a city council agenda at various points, and whether action was taken or not, and there was numerous times where concepts and the full almost 100-page Mead and Hunt report was available. And so I just wanted to point that out. There's been a number of questions and comments about how this hasn't been discussed and hasn't been available, and so I just wanted to point out that whether this meets people's level of, you know, what they consider satisfactory may be a different story, but it has been available quite a bit. The main report that kind of drove what we're talking about tonight, the Sandy Beach boat launch reconstruction, was this report, Sandy Beach Redevelopment Report, led by Mead and Hunt. It began in 2016 and terminated in 2017. It's a 90-page report to analyze the highest and best use for the Sandy Beach park spaces to serve a diverse user groups and stakeholders. And then it also incorporated some pretty, I don't know, there's a lot of different analysis of potential revenue sources to support both the initial investment in the park and then how the city can maintain that high quality resource for future generations, because what they have now and what is proposed at Sandy Beach will have quite a bit of maintenance work and expense on it, and the city needs a revenue source to be able to support that going forward. And then this report was presented to the city council on January 16th, 2018. The video of the presentation is still available on the city's website, as well as this full report and many other documents if anybody's interested. The proposed concept that came out of that report is shown here. I'll just highlight some of the main components. There was a complete redo of the mobile home community, new road network, new lot layouts. This is the boat launch over here. This was moved from the center of the beach so that the beach area could be opened up and be a larger, more cohesive space for the beachgoers, which many people have said gets extremely busy during the summer. We had a new restaurant, bar, potential banquet type facility here, new volleyball courts, and then a much larger parking area, many more parking stalls. These were supposed to be rental cabins, but the current city council has said that they have zero interest in doing that. So that's on the concept, but currently not really being discussed. Different angle and a different rendering here of what that concept might look like. Again, the boat launch down here, what we're talking about tonight. This is the proposed staging of these improvements, and as you can see, the boat launch was going to be the first stage, and that's needed because we need to pull the boat launch out of the center of the rest of the beach space before you start doing some of the other improvements. And again, another kind of zoomed in view on the conceptual boat launch layout in that Mead and Hunt report from January 2018. Really nice rendering, I thought. The original basis for the boat launch design that I'm going to dive into here was we were going to use the SOBA, States Organizations for Boating Access Design Handbook. I just want to point that out, that what you see here isn't just Strand or myself making up how these parking stalls are laid out and dimensions and things like that. We're going off a well-respected design handbook for this work. Keeping the boat launch and boat launching activities separate from the beach patrons. Again, we want to eliminate that safety hazard of kids running around right next to where people are launching boats. Maintain the existing number of vehicle and trailer stalls. That's currently at 15, and we're planning to put that back. Minimize the impacts of the existing car parking lot for the master concept layout. What that means is we wanted to keep it as much in the corner as possible to allow as much space for future car parking to address that lack of, I guess, normal parking, you could say. That the city had heard of. So that was the original design. To increase the boat launching throughput by adding a launch slip. Keep as many existing trees in the proposed boat launch area as possible. Provide aquatic invasive species control devices. Plan for the future stormwater treatment devices in stage 1, which means we want to set up all the future stormwater that we need to do with all the parking lot and proposed improvements, so that we don't have to do any more stormwater outlets to the lake, that we want to keep those all off to the side so the beach is a nice clean beach and we don't have to put a stormwater outlet out there somewhere. And then ideally to keep the city's Sunny Pier terminating at the same location as it currently is. So I put what the conceptual drawing from the Mead and Hunt report was here next to what was the original concept, which was presented at the March 14th public involvement meeting. Just to show you that, you know, we were trying to keep to that original concept as much as possible, and why is because this original concept over here was developed specifically so that it occupied the space and things needed to do what was proposed for the rest of the park. So that's how we arrived at that original concept. After, I guess this is just another kind of zoomed out view of it, but we already went through that the last meeting. So summary of the public comments that were received off of option 1. And again, I said at the council meeting, this is my best attempt to summarize the general concepts. You know, it might not be people's exact wordings, but trying to summarize all the numerous concepts that we had. The boat launch design was too tight and there wasn't enough room for maneuvering or queuing. We were paving too much of the existing grass space south of the beach. The boat launch parking areas occupied prime waterfront space. Encouraging boat traffic to exit at the western end of the launch will increase traffic in front of my home, or we could also say down all the way to the end of Sandy Beach Road. Creating a boat launch in this space will negatively impact the view of the lake for the town residents on the south side of Sandy Beach Road. Not enough beach space remains for park patrons to beach their boats on, meaning we had heard that people like to come in and stick the nose up and go into the bar or the restaurant. What will happen with the popular volleyball leagues? The boat launch should be eliminated entirely. There's too many boats on Rock Lake. And then the new boat launch location will negatively impact fish habitat and aquatic vegetation. And then recently I've been hearing about a turtle migration. I put that in quotes because I'm still trying to figure out what that is if it's just a nesting thing or where they're coming from and where they're going and what kind of turtles they are. So, sure. Then I guess I separated them a little bit here because there was a number of people that wrote in with these general concepts that the existing boat launch can be dangerous and that there's been a number of close calls there, and that moving the boat launch makes logical sense to enable future development and eliminate the driveway across the pedestrian spaces. So the proposed boat launch reconstruction, we're calling option 2A. There was a 2 that was proposed that was put on the city council agenda, and it's available online. That we made just a couple minor modifications to after it was put online, so that's why I'm calling it 2A. This was quite a bit of a change, as you can see. That I'll try to summarize some of the. I've got a. Oh, why don't I do this? I'll just read these first. Oops. Option 2A addresses the public comments. Additional boat maneuvering space added. We have dedicated queuing and tie-down areas. I'm going to go back to the exhibit and show you where all these are. I just want to list them first. Reduced additional impervious area versus option 1. We are adding 22,000 square feet or about half an acre of new impervious area. We are only paving, I'm saying only, because 5,000 square feet is not that much really compared to adding 22,000 feet of impervious. We're taking out some impervious as well. So there's a net grass space, a loss of 5,000 square feet. Now some of that loss is not, we're losing grass near the lake that, not as much as option 1, but we're losing grass near the lake. But we're putting grass back in other places. So I just want to point that out. I'm not just trying not to be deceptive, that we are losing more than 5,000 square feet kind of towards the lake. If you go from like the north edge of the volleyball courts towards the lake, there's some loss there still, and you'll see that. We increased the grass picnic area south of the beach that will remain compared to option 1. The western exit was eliminated entirely to address those traffic concerns. We eliminated the long-term trailer parking that was proposed in the boat launch area, and will remove the fence on the north side of Sandy Beach Road to ease the impact on the view of the lake. We reduced the shoreline plantings to increase the boat beaching space that I had mentioned. People thought we were getting rid of too much of that. We relocated the 4 volleyball courts farther east. Those were going to go into what's kind of the existing low area, or it's like the ice skating rink, I believe, in the winter. And then maintain the existing number of vehicle trailer parking stalls and access to southeastern Rock Lake. That was, some people said there's too much access, get rid of the boat launch. Other people said we want more vehicle trailer spots, so we're staying at the same number. We actually kind of have to by state statute. So. There's a dedicated aquatic invasive species removal devices, 2 of them. And then the fence along the north side of the new boat launch will separate the beach patrons and the boat launching activities. And then the emergency access for the boat launch, emergency access only, from the boat launch to Sandy Beach Road. So I'll go back and kind of point out some of these. Got a larger view here if we need it, but I'll zoom in on some of the areas I pointed out. So We moved this back a little bit. That was the area for maneuvering in front that people were concerned about being too tight. There was permanent boat trailer parking along here. We removed that entirely, and now this area marked here is just for, like, I guess you could call it a recombobulation zone or a tie-down zone where people can pull over and get all the garbage out and strap their boat down. That's where one of the aquatic invasive species devices would be, is kind of at the head of that queuing line, so people can park there, and all the water and the plants and things like that would run right into the bioretention basin there. We added a dedicated queuing space over here as well for people waiting to enter the launch. We also have one of those devices over here too that you're encouraged to clean your boat before you go into a new water body as well, so we wanted to put that in. What we're planning or proposing at this time, there's a whole array of those aquatic invasive species control devices, but it would be just kind of an informational sign with some tools to help people scrub off and grab weeds and things from under their trailer and things like that. So it wouldn't be some of what people may have seen where there's electric ones, there's ones with power washers, there's ones with vacuums and stuff like that. At this point, we're not proposing that. Although we could in the future. Specifically, this one here is pretty close to an electric source and a water source that you could switch that out if you needed to. Let's see, we took shoreline plantings here that had extended most of the way, another, I guess, half of the way over to the dock, and we skinnied those up, so this would be some space where people could come and nose their boat up if they wanted to just beach. This would continue to be, in the near term, and well, I guess, and the long term, the swimming area. So we would encourage those people who want to just dock their boat to come over here. I'll point out that we were going to get rid of the fence here. This is the fence along the north side of Sandy Beach Road. It's a 6-foot chain link fence. So we eliminate that along here and then also here. But then we would put a new one in along the north side of the boat launch, and it would terminate somewhere around the beach or the water, exactly where we need to determine still. But that would be put in to keep people from just going into the beach, because they would still be required to pay to enter the park. So we're trying to keep people from just being able to walk into the beach. One of the big things we changed from option 2 to option 2A was the city. We talked to the city about, there's a bur oak tree here that we were originally trying to preserve, but most of the lower branches, maybe even up to half of the canopy, was going to have to go because they're pretty low, and if that's going to be in a parking lot, they'd have to get cut for boats and cars that drive under them. And then also construction traffic isn't very kind to an oak tree. They're specifically susceptible to root damage, and they might die like shortly after. And so it was thought that'd be very difficult to save that one. So what we did, instead of trying to save that one, we moved this island a little bit, and we're proposing to put two new trees in each parking island. Let's see, again, the I guess, permanent normal use access to Sandy Beach Road was eliminated. But at the city council meeting, it was voted to, or motioned, however you want to put that, to put a emergency access only drive through there. And the thought was that if, somebody was coming off the lake with an injured boater, or there was a boat fire or something like that, and it was a busy weekend, that if an emergency vehicle had to come in through here and there's 8 people queued up and there's people walking all over the place, that it might be kind of a mess for them to try and actually get to the water. So city council voted to add that in. Now, what exactly that's going to be, we haven't determined that yet. I mean, of paramount importance is going to be that we make sure that people don't just use it. So whether we make it, I guess what I'm showing here is kind of like a grass paver type thing that would be like visually different than just an asphalt roadway that might discourage people. We've talked about putting like do not enter emergency access signs on both sides of it. And the grass pavers, you could put a gate across it. I just want to say that we're absolutely trying, that is not going to be like something that people just use to exit onto Sandy Beach Road. Many of the things I just discussed have various levels of cost and implications for an emergency vehicle. You know, if you put a gate, is it keyed? Who has the key? Is it some sort of remote control? Is it a key fob? You know, how big is the gate? Like, you know, there's all kinds of things that you need to talk about and decide on. You know, is something less intrusive, like some sort of decorative rope or something, good enough, you know, that people, if they have to get out of their car and move a bunch of stuff, that they won't use it. Just a lot of debate there, but I just want to say that the intention is that that would not be like a public use exit back onto Sandy Beach Road. Couple other things we still have. This has been there in a number of options, but it would be kind of like a little vending machine space. Oh, yeah, right here for boaters to use. May contain like a fishing bait vending machine or soda, stuff like that. And then I guess in terms of traffic circulation, this aisle here would be two-way, and then the southern one would be one-way only. So the theory is people would come in, drive this way, turn back in, launch their boat, pull in here, and then they'd park facing this way, and then they'd pull out. Yeah, they'd have to back out, and then they'd go around like this and go get their boat. So then there's, you know, a lot of debate on what people think is reasonable and what people would most likely do and things like that. But there's just not really a whole lot of reason why this southern one needs to be two-way. And so we would do that to help also prevent congestion, where if this was two-way, there's a situation where somebody pulls in here and they're thinking they're going to launch, and somebody pulls in right behind them and they go down this aisle, and then the two people converge right at the head of the launch, and one's trying to turn this way and the other's trying to turn this way. And so that's why we're trying to make sure people are all circulating the same way. Let's see, I'll point out a couple dimensions that people seem to have been asking about. From the tip of this dock to this dock that would run along the launch, that's 75 feet. This whole shoreline from the dock to the new launch edge is about 100 feet. We're currently showing about 25 feet of some sort of plantings, and that was encouraged by Jefferson County, that they thought it would be good to get some sort of vegetation along the lakeshore there. We were also showing it there because we're proposing a small stormwater outlet. It would be somewhere between a 12 to 18 inch size pipe, and that's pretty small. 12 inches is the smallest, like the city or the DOT puts in anywhere. So that vegetation would kind of help hide that, and the vegetation would be put in according to there's some UW extension literature on shoreline plantings in Wisconsin, you know, based on the zone we're in, and they have species guides for all different varieties of plants, and so we would try to follow that. We're also showing some plantings here currently, and that was meant kind of as a barrier between the launch and the swimming or you know, just the beach goers over here. It's also the area where the current grass gets the closest to the water, and there's a nice sized tree there, so it sort of made sense to, like, well, if we're going to put vegetation anywhere, let's maybe try and make a nice little vegetation strip here, kind of headed by a nice big tree. And so that's what's currently shown. The vegetation specifically, while encouraged generally by Jefferson County and across the state, you know, natural plantings down to the water's edge, prevent erosion, provide habitat, all that stuff is a good thing. That definitely is very easy to eliminate if we need to. The stormwater basins shown here, I think it's important to note again that those are not going to be like a wet pond. They would be intended for stormwater to flow into them, filter through. They'd be planted on the bottom. The stormwater would filter through a number of layers of soil and rock of different sizes, and that filtering is intended to pull out all the sediment and most of the pollutants that are in there, and then it would go through drain tile into the storm sewer and then into the lake. And after a rain event, unless it's a really large one, you may not see flow for a long time, potentially ever, depending on how big of a rain event it is. And whatever comes out of that stormwater outlet here would be like clean water. It would be clear. It shouldn't have any sediment. because the only way water even gets to there is it has to go through all the soil, through a drain tile that's wrapped in fabric and stone, and no sediment should really get into it. So in terms of like a cloudy water over there, you know, you may get some turbulence because when water flows in and hits the sand, it might stir it up for a short period, but the storm water shouldn't be shooting new sediment out into the lake there. So that's the intent. Let's see, we would restripe this area for parking, and I guess I'll go back to that bigger area. This is the current boat, vehicle, and trailer parking area. We would restripe that for normal parking. And what these two restripings would mean is we would end up in the short term with a net increase of 15 parking stalls in the normal parking lot. We would move the volleyball courts over here, so you would keep the same amount of volleyball courts as you have now. And then a couple of things that we're proposing with the existing launch is we would eliminate some of the asphalt that's currently there, plant it with probably just grass, and leave what would create more of like a pathway network to the, both for like maintenance vehicles to circulate, and then more of a path to the boat, or I'm sorry, to the bathroom, so that beachgoers can kind of use this path and go to the restroom here. In the short term, we would leave the existing launch. It's been discussed that that might be useful again for emergency vehicles in the short term, because in the long term, that would be proposed to go away. It could also potentially be used for like non-motorized craft launching. You know, if somebody wanted to sit at the beach with their family and park here and carry a small kayak down or something like that. You know, there's just not, it's an expense to remove, and it seems like there may be some use for it going forward, since we're not expanding the beach to the full concept in the short term. So that was proposed to stay basically as is. And I think that pretty much hits on most of the changes on the boat launch. Also important, a lot of people have heard this already, but kind of why we're doing this right now is there's some funding opportunities available. There's 2 grants. We've already applied for one, the Sport Fish Restoration Grant. We submitted on February 1st. No. And can I just finish and we can answer it at the end? And then the Recreational Boating Facilities Grant application is due June 1st. And the important part of that one is you need engineering drawings to a point where you can submit them to the DNR for permits, and those permits are supposed to be included with your grant application. And so we need to advance the design to a point where the DNR can tell how you're impacting the lakefront, what your impervious areas are, how you're treating the stormwater, are you treating it properly to the extent that they need all those things that they need to be able to issue a permit for the project. These grant programs, either one can fund up to 50% of the project, and they can pair together. So theoretically, you could get 100% of the project cost funded. That never happens, but it's fairly typical to get a significant portion, let's say 50%. And I have an example here that in Prairie du Sac, we had one 4 or 5 years ago that got 87% funding. They were a really unique situation, so that's also very rare, but just as an example. So, I mean, as you can see, let's say we get 50%, you know, we're trying to do right by all the taxpayers of the city by getting, say, $400,000, $500,000 worth of free money from the federal and state grant programs. And some other important notes is if we apply for these grants this year, that means that construction at the earliest would be 2020. This application creates an upfront investment for the city because they do have to pay for the engineering to get to a certain extent to be able to apply for them. The boat launch construction could be a standalone project. Like, this is by no means, if the city goes forward with this project, locking them into the whole concept for the rest of Sandy Beach Park and the mobile home community and all that stuff. You know, this very well could be just built, and, you know, people don't like the plan and it just sits there for 5 years, and it wouldn't necessarily negate anybody's use of the area. It would actually add some parking, as I mentioned. And then also that the Sandy Beach existing launch could remain open during construction because we're kind of off to the side, and We would also probably shoot for more of a shoulder season construction. This would probably take like 2 to 3 months to build, so we would try to do it either in the spring or the fall after like the busiest part of the year. So I guess that's the end of my formal presentation, so I'm sure there's lots of questions and comments. This, do you want the big one or the more zoomed in one?
Big one.
Big one?
Still have no idea how that emergency exit onto Sandy Beach Road is going to be protected, because you should be there on a hot Sunday or Saturday afternoon. Those boats are gonna come down there thinking that's an entrance.
And well, as I said, that is the paramount importance of what we're trying to do. We need to discuss. Was that?
Without a gate being there.
Right, we understand that is the most important thing, is to make sure people aren't using that going in or out of the boat launch.
But a road. Turn around and they got a boat.
Yeah, you don't realize they miss even the big parking lot now and come down, and then they have to back up.
Yeah, so that is what you're saying is partially why right now I'm showing like more of a grass paver. So from far away, it would just look like grass. You wouldn't see this big asphalt driveway there and think that's where I go in. But I hear you, and we need to sort through those details. Again, this was a city council addition to the plan at the council meeting last week. So, you know, if people think it's not a good idea, they can certainly change their mind, but that's why it was added back into the project, anything down there. So,
What happened to the whole east side of the beach? You got this big square, you're considering the beach area, or heading to the beach way to the east?
Go east.
Go east.
East of the old.
Yeah, right there. What happened
well,
to
we're
that?
not doing anything with that as part of the Low Launch project. It'll just stay as is.
Okay,
Why?
and I did ask a question
That's
about
a
that a
question.
couple times and got no answers. Why can't that project all be east versus west, where it affects all of the people on Sandy Beach Road for view and the value of our property and the amount of traffic that's going up and down the end of a kind of a funnel of traffic. Over here, you aren't obstructing anybody's view. There's already roads that go down there. You're getting rid of the bathrooms anyway, so you should be able to make that road wider, and your whole parking lot would not be right sitting on top of the water.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the comments. I sent you quite a detailed email, Ms. Catalani Davies, that, well, I responded to you, and I'm not trying to be combative. I'm just saying I'm trying to provide the answers that you're looking for, and the reason why we're not putting this here is because what that does is it makes people have to drive all the way through this whole thing. This is going to be a big parking lot in the future, so you're going to have people like walking all around there. The mobile home community. No, not in the long run.
Oh, no, really? Where's the
Yeah.
volleyball gonna go then?
It's gonna be inside back where the
Right.
volleyball court is. It's very buggy back there.
Well, it would change. I mean, there's.
If you go back to the broad plan, I guess I don't understand why the current, no, I want to see the picture, please. Why the current roadway that comes in and you pay your fees, and you currently would have gone in a little bit to the left to launch your boat, there's a whole road structure going to the right. I don't understand why that couldn't have just made a circle to the parking lot right around.
I'm going to the water where the dock is.
And what are you, I guess, are you proposing?
Well, you know where you come
So
in?
over here, there's also a lot of topography. So the boat launch requires, as you can see, a large, at a minimum, up by the water, a large turning area for the boats. You know, you can have a large turning area and then have them come back out to a parking lot someplace else. But, you know, if you take this space and you plop it over here, now you're taking up quite a bit of.
A large turning area in the boat launch right now.
Correct, and that's not very ideal.
It's been ideal for 50-something years.
I've heard a lot of people say that that's quite a bit less than ideal over there.
Well, and
You're talking about only various times, and I've never seen.
You got a question?
I just want to say, I don't object to this concept. It's just, doesn't make sense to me to put it in a very obstructive, narrow area when it could go to an area where it's not obstructing people. And you already have slots for all those boats identified in the east side of the parking lot. So I don't know, I guess I don't understand why that wouldn't work. Was there ever a plan designed to use the east side?
Yeah, there was planned to have features over there.
But not move the boat launch over there?
Right, so the general concept is that it's not, if you have vehicles with pulling boats, you don't want them to be driving across the space where you have a mobile home community over here that has 100 trailers in it in the summer, full of, let's say average 4 people, that everybody, they come here so that they can come to the water. And we're going for the highest and best use of the space for the most amount of people. I understand this might impact the way that your view specifically of the lake is, but we're trying to not recreate this situation where people are speeding in here with a boat to come way over here and crossing across a parking lot in an area where, hundreds of people that live here are trying to get to the beach.
You've got a question back here.
All right.
My name is Hope Bostock. I am the town chairman of the town of Lake Mills. I feel a little challenged tonight because you have not addressed any of the things that I brought up at the last budget meeting. You have not addressed the 10 specific ideas that I put forward. I'm a little disappointed in that. Now, tonight, you have a room full of people. I would like to know, is there anyone here from the Lake Mills City Park Board? Vicki, you are here? Who is this?
Steve Fields,
Tim Sprecher.
Tim Sprecher.
Somebody else.
The City Park Board is well aware of what's going on, Hope. And Hope, we've looked at your items, and I suggest that you have the town board do a study and submit it to the city, and we'll review it. Thank you.
Steve, I did not come here tonight again to debate this issue with you personally. And I want to emphasize that. I am speaking as a person who lives in the city of Lake Mills and uses the lake. I am not speaking as the town chairman, although I definitely have a ace in that hole. What I would like to say tonight are a few things, that this is a shared resource. Many of the people that are here do not live in the community of the city of Lake Mills. They live in the town of Lake Mills. And I believe their words need to be heard, as well as the town of Lake Mills, which has jurisdiction over the waters of Rock Lake. This is an important role that the town has, and we have had this discussion about jurisdiction. This is adding to the confusion that we have at Sandy Beach at this point in time. I think you need to look at this more as a shared resource. And all I'm advocating for tonight is that you go back to the drawing board. Your plans are faulted. You have not considered all of the people who live in this community who need to have input on every one of those 10 points that I put forward, beginning with the geology and the historic part of that beach area. Your plans are faulted because you have not put forward any true compromises. And we need to have a master plan. You stumbled on a few things tonight. I could go over that list. I can't imagine that you would leave 2 launches open at that lake for any amount of time. I can't imagine that you haven't looked at the parking dynamics of this area. There's a million things. I can't imagine that you were proposing that you would have a storm sewer drain into Rock Lake, even if it goes through that filtration basin. I think there are so many concerns here that you have not addressed. And I believe that we need to go through a master planning process. And if it takes 12 months to go through each and every one of these focal points that I put forward, it's a process that we need to go forward on. And I will create a device to do that. If it takes the power of the town of Lake Mills to create that device, I don't think that we have a solid master plan to go forward with to apply for a grant. I can't imagine that you are going to go to the organizations and the people around this lake and ask for support of this half-developed plan. I say a master plan needs to be put in place, no matter how painful or how costly it becomes. I am finished. I am not going to say another word in this meeting. I am not going to debate you or the engineers, but I think we need to engage in a master planning process for Sandy Beach.
I was told this week by a member that we were in the township and we have no clout. I was told that by someone, but we're part of the community. That lake is our resource too. And I
I'm
think
certainly not
we
debating
have
that.
We have a say, even if we are in the township. I did not like to hear those words, but they were put out very strong to me.
Well, I just want to go back to one thing, and I'm not debating that. I just want to go back to one thing, that this was I guess, quite a bit of a master plan for Sandy Beach. It may not be exactly what you're envisioning. There was a lot of thought and, analysis that went into that. And you suggested previously, we all read and looked through your comments. You sent them in, we heard them, and then you sent them in via email. One of your comments was it needs to be led by an engineering company. That's what the city did. That's what that is. It's 100 pages. Have you read it? Have you gone through that to see what's actually in it, what the city already did? I mean, a lot of what you're asking us to do is already in here. And that's what can be frustrating, is you're portraying to people that this hasn't been done when a lot of these things have been discussed. They're at least available to, I think it's prudent to come from a place where you know where the baseline of what's already been evaluated is.
Yeah, but why didn't you address Hope's points? I mean, she gave you a 12-point, maybe 10. I thought it was 12. 10 points of her concerns, and no one addressed a single one of them?
I think we have addressed them. I didn't go through Hope's point number 1, Hope's point number 2.
That's what I would have thought.
But we addressed many of her comments. And I would also point out that just because somebody says something doesn't mean it automatically has to change something that you see there. For instance, your stormwater thing. There's currently a stormwater outlet to the lake that takes stormwater directly from the parking lot, unfiltered through anything, and sends sediment out into the lake in the middle of the beach. What we're proposing to do is take all of the stormwater from all impervious surfaces in Sandy Beach Park, send them through filtering devices to a small outlet on the side that's not even in the middle of where everybody's trying to enjoy that beach. Well, but again, this is why I try to stress this, is it's going through a filtering process that all is going to come out is clean water. This is a requirement by the DNR, that you have to treat stormwater to put in new impervious areas. We can't get away from that. The other option we could have is a wet basin, where it just flows in and it only comes out if it reaches like a very, very high level. And I feel like that type of device would be fought much harder. Like, would people want an open water basin right across the street from their house, Well, it would be, it's, people talk about buggy. Is it a concern for my kids? There's, trash gets in there and floats around, and it gets, nutrients sit in there, and it gets lots of algae. They can become kind of unsightly sometimes. People generally just don't really like wet basins if they can get away from them. So really our only other option is to send a stormwater outlet to the lake someplace, and we're trying to use the best place and provide the highest quality stormwater effluent to the lake that we can, which again, I think is much higher quality than you have now. Yes.
I know you had said that you had originally done some layouts and that with the ramp at the east end of the beach. I've never seen any of those or any way, shape, or form, so I don't totally understand the complication. I've done a very crude layout, best I could, based on your drawings that you currently have, indicating that, I guess you're concerned about the trailer park that is adjacent to what would be the entrance to the ramp on the east end. It's already there. I mean, right now there is a gate that's 3 foot wide that all of the trailer residents go through. And they cross the path of the,
Dug in here, or?
No,
right
to the
over on that
east,
side,
more
right-
east.
Right by where the ice rink would be.
Yeah.
So they're already funneled into a location that goes across the path of trailer traffic now. So I don't accept that argument, I guess, at this particular point. And, you know, the layout that I've done, I kind of based it on Fontana Lake up Lake Geneva. I mean, even at that point, you know, I'm sure that there's differences that we've done, but instead of I assume that you proposed a 2-lane ramp
Yep.
with docks, I believe, on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, in Fontana, I mean, they've got it organized that it's virtually the same amount of space, but it's a 4-lane deal. You got an in ramp and an out ramp. If you're taking your boat up, you're on this side. You're putting it in, it's this side. It appears, at least based on my ignorant drawing here, that you can not only preserve the mound with the slide on it and provide a fenced area that children can safely enter a fenced play area, the access from the trailer park in, and I guess I've heard rumors that trailer park was being abandoned anyway, but. As
That
far
is a
as-
rumor, that is a rumor.
Okay.
What's so ongoing?
So,
Well, anybody.
and I've even looked and added additional boat trailer parking on the exit out there. So I guess maybe I don't have a clear idea of what the focus is to move the ramp and to move it to the west end. Because if anybody has been here in the summertime, the biggest problem is the trailer parking all the way up the road on a road that's, 12 feet wide. I mean, that's dangerous to just drive. So I guess I don't understand why the focus isn't to make it more accessible for boat trailer traffic, parking for boat trailer traffic. You know, your issue with, well, that's a really long walk from here to that end for the boat ramp. I guess I don't understand the difference between the boat ramp on the west end to go to the toilet facilities that are complete opposite end of the beach. I mean, to me, and again, I'm only speaking based on the fact that, the house next to the Reynolds, to choose that to be your focus for all the boat trailer launching traffic and the exiting that's going to happen there in a extremely, well, first of all, a dead end, that it just doesn't seem like the flow is clear, that's the way it should go. And I'm guessing that if you took a vote tonight, I would think that there's an awful lot of people in here that say, let's put it on the east end and let's work on how do we make that happen? Rather than just say, we're putting a stamp on it that's going on the west end, because that's where our design is.
Couple things.
Because we're hurried by that grant.
So I want to go back to why we put it over here to begin with. There was a master plan concept, a 100-page report led by an engineering planning company that evaluated all the various aspects and the various amenities and like revenue streams needed to support the beach and things like that.
Can I just interrupt you for a second?
Well,
Is
hold
there
on,
something
I gave you
that-
10
that we
minutes.
don't
I
know
gave you
about?
10 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why this boat launch is put over there, to be compliant with that master plan. So when I say we didn't approach this boat launch from just here's a blank space, put it where you best think. It was here's a space that we need to put all of these different components. That report went through, oh man, I don't know, 15 different things of layouts of how you could do sandy. Yeah, that's what this is
With no public comment.
We didn't hear about any of those.
so I'm not a lawyer, but there's things on the city council website that every time the city does something through the council, they're not required to mail everybody within a 50-mile radius what they're doing. It's available on the city's website. The report that I'm mentioning is available. It's on the January 16, 2018 council agenda. There's a link to the whole thing if you want to read it. So that's why we put it here to begin with, is we weren't just said, put a boat launch at Sandy Beach, where do you want to go? It was trying to be compliant with the whole master plan. Another concept that people, I think, aren't thinking about is costs of putting on the west end. There's some hills there that to put a boat launch in, to flatten that all out, you're cutting down many, like, large oak trees. You know, on the main street here, people were putting hearts on the trees because they didn't want to cut them down. But now I'm hearing,
They were cut down.
but I'm saying here, it doesn't seem like anybody cares about cutting down 15
Like the last
trees.
council meeting, or 2 council meetings ago, back in January, was that, you know, originally, the
Mhm.
layout that you had shown, I believe you even have the slide up there now with the isometric view of what it would look like. All the trees were gone at that point until we brought it up saying, wait a minute, you're taking all the trees out, so.
Actually, I want to correct you, because we actually are preserving every single tree, except for the one oak tree. The city said, well, we could keep it, but in the long run, it might die, so take it. In the area we're proposing, we had a concept to preserve every single tree. So I just want to make sure there's no misinformation.
And that was in the original plan too. Every single tree in the original plan was saved.
Correct, yeah.
So white ash is going though.
Yes, the white ash is going, but not because it had to go, it's going because we take out white ash.
Because of that emerald ash borer thing, not because of that.
That oak is a gorgeous oak. It's gorgeous. And it might die, well, yeah, maybe 100 years from now.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
But I still think fundamentally, I haven't heard the answer to your question. Where's the logic of going from the narrow end on the west instead of on the east? Where's the logic?
So I guess
Not
I want to point out one thing. I just want people to recognize that this is the full width Sandy Beach Road. We're not exiting onto the narrow part. The narrow part's way down here.
Positive,
Yep.
okay?
But originally we
But
were.
where's the logic? Let's just finish the thought
Sure.
of the east side versus the west side.
The thought is that it's much safer for boats, vehicles pulling boats, to enter the launching area straight from a roadway than to come through a network of the park to get all the way
Brandon,
over here.
when there's a storm,
Mm-hmm.
do you know how many people pile up to come in and out of that thing? And tensions get terse and all
Sure.
that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I'm telling you what, it's a madman's race.
And I would ask
And
you,
you would need more room to enter and return than less room.
I guess I would ask you, what would the difference be on this location?
You would have a lot more space. I mean, look at the length for people to queue in and queue out and allow for them to remove their boats versus that little tiny corner on the west side.
You know, we heard some of these at the first meeting, that
But a
people
storm-
want to throw out
you know,
these
one of the first
situations
meetings I asked you
that
to,
are like,
have you ever
yeah,
been
you
down
know,
there?
okay, that might be an issue
Have you ever been
when,
down there? And you said, no, I haven't. I hope you have since then, and you don't have to answer that.
yeah, well, it's not
I'm
busy
telling
summer
you
season right now.
that it gets really high tension
Mm-hmm.
when all of a sudden it blackens up and everybody wants out at the
Mm-hmm.
same time.
Sure,
And that happens dozens of times over the summer.
sure.
And
Sure.
Brandon, why is my family and friends not as important as the day people when that launch is right next to our private pier?
I'm certainly not saying you're not as important. Everybody's important.
Well,
There's
you're
just
looking out for
multiple
the people that
stakeholders
come
that we
through
need
the
to
day,
take into
Brandon,
account.
But you're not looking out to protect us by our pier.
Whenever you do any project anywhere, you're going to affect people. And some people might determine it's a negative impact to them, and other people might think it's a great impact to them. And that's what we're trying to balance here. And I'm hearing your comments, and I'm saying this is not like we're disregarding what you're saying. It's just we're trying to make the best use of this park space for the highest and best use for the most amount of
Taking
people.
away place for people to go. You say, oh, we're not taking away much green space.
Right.
But those volleyball courts are used by the beach people, and they picnic all around, all up and down. We're right there, where we see it all. You're cutting all that off, and you're like, oh, but we got the sandy area. Not everybody wants to be on the sand. They want to picnic all over the place.
I'll address that in a second. He's been holding his hand up
Yeah,
nicely for
sorry.
quite a long
Patient.
time, so yeah.
One thing that scares the life out of me about moving up there to the east end is the Indian Mounds. So I want that to be known. There's a lot of unknowns up there besides what's known up there. So if we start planning on doing something on the east end, we risk I guess, the opportunity to disturb Indian burial grounds up there. So while we're looking at that also, because we have to look at that as Indian burial grounds, there's a lot of unknowns up there. And if we started digging and trying to move stuff up there, that could hold any of these other projects off for 5, 6, 10 years. So that's one reason why we didn't look up there to put the boat launch up there, because that's just a scary area to even look at when you're talking about Indian burial grounds.
But you were gonna put cottages there.
No, we weren't.
You were originally?
We were never gonna put cottages there. That was part of the concept drawing for them to tell us, this is a use you could use, and we told them, no, we don't want to use it.
All right.
And
So-
I also want to point out that this is exactly why we're here tonight, is because certainly, I mean, I take my direction from the city staff and ultimately city council, who directs the city staff to do whatever they want me to do. So if everybody's comments here tonight result in, some direction to look at other concepts and kind of rethink the whole thing, that's possible. But I do think that there are advantages to this, that yes, it would impact the people that live the closest to us, to it, sure. I see that.
Well,
But
dimension in where the present launch is to the mound, and do you have a straight shot right out to the road?
Well, there's a lot of unknowns there too.
Well, you can, but it's not dimensioned. I don't know what the distance is.
what are you, from where to
See
where?
the present launch is?
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the mound is to the right, east.
Like
of that.
somewhere in here, right?
Okay, so if you come straight out, you can go directly to the road and you got more room for queuing.
Yeah, but then you're still cutting in half parking lots, whereas this creates a separate parking lot just
So what?
for,
So what?
just
So
for the
what?
boats.
So what?
Safety.
Control.
Safety,
Yeah, yeah.
control.
Okay, question back there.
You gotta look at all the parts of it, so don't just look at your part. Look at how this affects the community as a whole. Don't be selfish. That's all I can say. Don't be selfish.
Thank you very much.
Think about everybody else in this community.
Just a couple questions then,
We
that,
live there, Mike.
one, that
So do we.
I personally,
We live
as
here
a
too.
citizen of
Think
this
about us
place,
too.
People are asking questions nicely.
that you have moved it so that, I'm a boater, I'm also a beach user, but rarely do I do both. So to me, it's nice to be able to get the boat in, separate from anybody else, and get down to where you designed it. And I applaud you for the upgrade and the change. I do have a question though, I don't see anything on here where, is there a plan to have porta potties or a small area for people to use the facilities that are closer to the launch?
There is not currently one. I mean, that's certainly something that we could look into. There is sewer and water in the area that we could try to bring in there.
It just seems like with that fence and this and that,
Mhm.
it'd be quite a walk to get to the, versus now where the launch is, the facilities are pretty close.
Okay.
Brandon, are you gonna have the fence go down through the beach to separate the bathing part and the launch part?
Generally, I'll say yes.
Okay.
Where exactly? I mean, does it go all the way to the normal water's edge? Does it kind of stop at the top? We hadn't
What
really.
happens when a family comes, because we see it all the time at the launch? When a family comes, the wife gets out of the boat with the kids and the cooler and the rafts, and the husband gets in the boat and goes off to go fishing. How is she gonna get from that launch with the fence separating to the beach? Does she have to come all the way up through this parking lot?
Yes, and the reason is because the city still, at least in the short term, is going to maintain the policy of having people pay to enter the beach. So we want people to have to go through this gatehouse area. And I understand that may not be convenient in that specific situation, but to contrast that, if you didn't put this fence here, people could just walk into the beach from wherever. We've heard from people that they get people coming through their backyards. I mean, if there was no fence here at all, it'd be free for all coming off the path and into the beach. And So we feel like while that might be a thing, I agree with you, that could happen, and they might be, I gotta walk all the way around. You know, for the greater good, it'd be better to have a fence.
You can also park on the far east end of that, and you're about as close to the bathrooms as you would be in the parking lot now, where you have boat parking.
Right here?
Yes, and the fencing is there in the short term for control through the park, but it does fall into the long-term plan of being able to open the area up more. So you did have a plan of running that, and you do have a plan of running that asphalt drive all the way up to it and having a gate through the fence
Right.
at some point in time.
Yeah,
Frank is,
I'll go with you right there.
Where does one pay to put the boat in?
There's gonna be a pay station somewhere right about here. And then we had talked about potentially having two. So
Will it be manned or just voluntary?
I believe it would be voluntary. Is that what you have now?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So this right here, this little, yeah, this little blurb here is the town ordinance governing lake rules, and so somewhere right next to the launching ramp would be, I guess, generally where you could put it. The thought was at least. I think he's had his hand up for a while back there.
I'm just curious, I have read your feasibility study, and I've looked through what I could find in the master plan, and in terms of running it along the east, I've heard it referenced a number of times now that one of the major concerns is safety of the residents or the people that live in the mobile home park crossing over the traffic. Considering how robust this plan is, was it ever considered putting in a pedestrian bridge, running it through the east, and answering that question by putting in a pedestrian bridge, which would be a drop in the bucket compared, considering the dollar amount going into this investment?
Well, this one might be, because I don't know the answer to that. Mark Sauer over there.
It's not that expensive.
Mark Sauer from Mead and Hunt, who wrote the report, is over there, so I'm not sure exactly if that was ever considered. I don't remember hearing about it, but Mark, I don't know if you.
To directly answer your question, no, a pedestrian bridge was never considered. I mean, again, with the Indian Mound, leaving from that, we assume there's an Indian Mound. We technically don't know. If you look back in the report and the timeline Brandon has, the number 2 step after we started the project was to consult with the Wisconsin Historical Society to get permission to even start this study. We don't actually know exactly where things are. We all make assumptions on where the mounds are. Our thought is if you put in a pedestrian bridge, bridges need footings, footings go deep. That stuff costs money, so, I mean, that's kind of the engineering answer. The short answer is no, we didn't look at that.
I mean, it's a possibility. It kind of goes back to, how many iterations and options do you run through, and this is exactly why we're here tonight, is to try and figure out what the priorities are. Yes.
We talk about safety, now you're saying the families of the boaters will have to walk potentially all the way back around to pay their fee. That's a safety issue in my mind, because they're now walking through the boat parking area and the parking lot where everyday people are parking to go through the gate to pay for their fee. So that's a safety issue. And then to talk about the Indian mounds, now I just heard you're not sure they're really there, but if they are, and they probably are, what better way for a city to, I don't know what the word is, memorialize or honor this situation as to make them landmarks and to some way build around them so that then they're known to everybody. I think, did you ever talk to the Historical Society, ever answer a question as to if that was done or not, or if you know? Somebody said you contacted the Historical Society.
Yeah, and they've done a few studies throughout the years, but nobody has.
But nobody answered yet, okay. I just wondered, because I really am in favor of the east side, and I am in favor of safety. I'm in favor of, honoring the Indian mounds.
I just want to point out one thing in response to your
Sure.
comment, that this is I know it's a small scale, but this is a sidewalk here that they would walk on the, separate from the driving area and come out to the parking lot here. Yes, they would enter the parking lot in the short term, because I guess unless the city instituted a second gatehouse or something like that, we wouldn't want to penetrate that fence into the beach area. But
There's this follow, you have that kind gray area that does not have markings for parking, is that parking?
Where are you at?
Right, down, right there.
Here?
Is that parking there?
Here, yes, this is existing parking that would stay.
So you just.
So I know it's very small, but a line right here that we would saw cut the asphalt, and there'd be a little grass space between the new boat launch and the existing parking lot.
The actual swim area, is that the same dimension as it was?
Yeah, I'm not exactly, the only difference in this area generally is that the city's dock right now goes out and then all the way this way. So what we did is we took the length that goes this way and we centered it. So this comes towards the beach, but I don't know if, Rob, if that actually impacts the swim area. Like, how far over does the swim area even go? Is it go all the way to the edge here, or?
Between the edge of the pier and the swim line currently is about 10 feet.
Okay,
We
so.
will probably have to move the swim lines over a
Yeah.
little bit. The east area, swim area will not change. The west may shrink a little bit.
And again, this dock concept is, I mean, that's just, we just tried to give the same amount of linear space. I mean, it could be moved around and
What is the dimension between the launch and the boat dock then?
right here.
Yeah.
I have it on there.
It's like 30 feet, I want to say.
Okay, because you're gonna get a lot of boats coming in there.
28.5.
Pull up, yeah.
28.5, okay.
They're gonna pull up there. They're
Sure.
gonna squeeze on that other side of it.
Sure.
And they're gonna pull up in that spot.
In the
Yeah,
wind.
no, again,
In the wind.
I mean, it's one of those things where maybe I shouldn't even have shown a pier because we're trying to show that there is a pier, there will be a pier, but please don't think that that's exactly how it has to go in. I mean, there's many arrangements, they could maybe take some sections and put them over on the other pier. I don't know what the options are, but that's definitely something that's very moldable, is where, where exactly does the pier go, what are the dimensions? So I see what you're saying, I mean, if people want to come in and, I don't know if they try to
just
dock,
saying.
it does get pretty shallow there, but.
A lot of people pull up.
Mhm.
A lot of people.
And I have been one of those people trying to figure out exactly where can I get in, because I want to, maybe go to the sandbar or,
Or to the beach.
Where are boats gonna nose out now for this one?
Well, there's some space here. Again, what's shown is like 80 feet, so you could probably put, I don't know, 8 boats maybe. I mean, I know they'd be tight together, but, and then, again, this is some of the debate with the plantings. We're being encouraged by Jefferson County Land and Water Conservation to put plantings, but if you put plantings, you eliminate beach space. We'll pull up to. So, where do you find the balance there? So if we eliminated all beach plantings, you would have this space here, which is probably 80 feet, and then maybe another 90 feet over here that people could pull up. Again, there's some interactions with the city's pier that we would have to figure out, but I mean, if you really look at it, the only space that you're truly losing is the width of this boat dock, or the boat launch.
And the parking lot, all that green space.
Well, I'm talking for people pulling up to the beach with their boat.
Well, they use that too. I've got a couple questions for you. There was a pier on the right of the current launch. Is that still going to be there?
Over in here,
Yeah.
off the screen, yeah, I believe
There's a
so.
city-
At least in the short term, Rob.
City
maybe-
pier right there.
Yeah, that's the swim pier for swim lessons for school.
Is that going to stay there, Rob?
Currently, yes, until we move on to the future phases, until we develop the entire lake shore.
Okay, second question is, are there going to be lighting in the parking lot on the west side?
Which, over here? Or
No,
this
there.
one? We don't have any proposed at this time.
That's what
but-
we've got a lot of maybe ifs, and we don't knows.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's why are we going so fast?
Well, I guess.
We don't know, we might do this, we might do that, we might have a mound, we might not have a mound.
I guess this is what we're here for, is because if we put all of these details in, they answer all of these very specific questions, like what is the dimension here, what is the permanent layout of the pier, and are there lights, what kind of lights, how tall? Then it would be difficult. We're here to gather priorities and what people want to see.
It
So,
feels a little like we're not really set, but we'll figure that out later.
well,
And
I guess
we
I would
don't have
ask
the
still,
input.
if we propose lighting, how would you feel about having lighting on the boat launch? Okay, so that's kind of why we didn't show any, is because people wouldn't want a lit up boat launch across the street.
One last thing, because I live right in front of there, and I do see the turtle migration,
Okay,
and there's hundreds of them.
I'm not debating it, I just don't know what it is.
$1.50, and I can't tell you what day they're gonna pop out.
Okay,
But when they pop out, they're going right across that parking lot.
Sure, okay, so I've been asking people this, where is it
I
that
can
they
tell you
go?
exactly, the whole stretch. The whole stretch, because the turtles come and lay their eggs on the other side of the road, and then when the babies come out, they start migrating
So
exactly
do
to
they
the
land
water,
They're gonna migrate.
in
and they're gonna
the,
go right across that parking lot.
I'm not trying to argue with anybody, I literally want to know the
You want me
answer.
to
What,
when they're
where, do they go to the volleyball courts, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
They're about the size of a half buck, you know?
so that, yeah,
And I would venture to say everybody's house along that area, I've seen that happen.
Oh, yeah.
There's a house with a little boat on it for the side, and we've seen them there, and they've seen them down the road. So yeah, it happens all up and down.
okay.
And it's a dual migration, because the mothers come and lay
Sure.
the eggs, and then hundreds of little ones go across the road,
Yeah.
right across that parking lot.
They
Sure.
come from the marsh behind us.
Sure. Well, these are all things that, I'm serious, I just didn't know what all the details were. People said turtle migration, I didn't know if they were snapping turtles, or what are we talking about? Where are they going? How many? Is it 2? Is it hundreds? I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, there's things that if that's a priority from the public to try to maintain that, I mean, we would obviously have to recreate some sort of
Well, you can
sand
hurt 'em
space,
if
but,
you can, but I'm telling you, they just come out, crawl out of the ground, and they go.
sure.
And they get hit the cars too.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a question about, you said that the launching of the boats would be self-pay for launching, kind of like it is in the north. I guess I didn't understand, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I've launched my boat at Sandy Beach many, many times, and I've always had a city pass that I bought. But I didn't think, they always make sure I have it before they let me in. So if people don't have that pass, they don't have to pay, they can just go in and launch and self-pay? I guess I didn't know that.
When the
It'd be like the
gatehouse is
parking
not
lot down in
open,
Madison, you have
there
it.
is a pay box that you put money in the envelope. There's a
Yeah.
big sign
Yeah.
that says, if the gatehouse is not open, pay at this
But if
box.
the gatehouse is open, you're supposed to pay at the gatehouse,
Correct.
correct? Okay.
But you
I-
won't,
That's what I thought. but- so
once
it's
this
not all
is developed, you'll pay at the box the entire time.
You'll lose money.
Boats gonna be allowed here between our pier and the launch.
Yes,
Probably.
yes.
We have to protect our swimming area somehow.
Put the launch on the other side.
Go east.
gentleman back here has a question.
How many feet does the city actually own on the lakefront and all the way up to like Woodland?
You're talking for Sandy Beach Park alone?
Yeah, the whole thing.
Well, their property starts right here at the left edge of this hatched area.
Right.
And then how many feet exactly is it? I'm not sure, but it goes off the screen, I think, or maybe it's like right here. Am I getting that right?
Go back to the concept plan.
So it's like a couple thousand feet or?
So they go from here to off the screen down here.
My question is on the
Oh, there you go, that
side
shows
of the frontage, you've shown everything you're doing on the west side and cramming it all in across the street from all these houses and everything.
Mhm.
What are you doing on the east side? What's proposed for that 1,000 feet over there?
Well, the only, I guess, unproposed space in my mind at least
I mean,
would be
right on the
this.
water, are you putting piers out there? Because I don't think the closest pier from Woodland is their pier, which is on the other side of their 600 feet of shore frontage.
The city does have a dock on this side that has both.
Pier.
Put it on
Pier
your
and
list.
lifts, yeah.
And Woodland does have theirs right up against the edge there too.
Yeah. I guess, did we answer your question? How many feet is there a dock?
The
Like,
fence line at Woodland, which would be the
Sure.
lot line on the far east side.
yep.
I don't remember seeing anything until you got down to almost the boathouse where all the boat slips were. Is there a pier somewhere in between there?
Yes.
Oh, there is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, swimming dock, okay. But
And
that's like-
there's a boat lift too. There are boat lifts.
Yeah.
There's a whole dock with
Right
bullets
where
in
the gas
it.
tank used to be, Tim.
Yeah, well, I guess, but there's nothing.
Right in front of the boathouse, there's a little marina.
Well, like I said, I mean, we're here to gather input and thoughts, and again, why we had it where we had it was to try and be compliant with that master plan.
The
So,
only concern I have is how many, there's like 10 or 15 houses there that are affected by this.
on
It
the
seems like
down
on the
here.
far east side, the only thing, there's nothing really over there that, other than the Indian mounds that you'd have to work around.
Well, there is
And a trailer park,
there is this one. Yeah, I mean, these people probably wouldn't be a fan of it.
because it's a seasonal trailer park.
And And
It's
trees.
just- They're only there.
There are trees and there's
You wouldn't be
elevations
building
and
in front
there's
of them.
Indian mounds. There's a lot of
Right
things
now,
going
it's all
on.
blocked anyway, can't even see it.
Houses.
Right.
I mean, there's some sort of recreational vehicle housing there. There's a road that goes right up to it. Why not make the road go down to the lake and make a turnaround and come back and put another, and put your boating a little more east of the boathouse that's existing
Are you
now.
talking this path here?
Yes.
So that's
And
not
your mounds are
intended.
supposedly on the other side of that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there isn't, I mean, we haven't drawn it up, so, I mean, I'm not saying there isn't a way that you, I'm not saying it's impossible to put it over here. This, I just want to point out that this is not intended to be like a boat launching driveway. It wouldn't like, be like we would just
No, we know that.
extend this, yeah.
We know that.
But that doesn't mean.
But it
But
is,
it's
it is an
workable.
access road
It's
that could
workable.
be worked onto, yeah.
Trucks drive on.
Yeah, the recreation, or their mower type
Yeah,
things. or
I mean,
their
again, I
tractors.
understand this location would impact people along the roadway here. We were, many of
It's
the
not
people are
even there,
speaking out
taken away from the
today,
beach.
so.
Yeah, the green space.
I don't care if you say, oh, we're gonna move the
Mhm.
volleyball courts. People use the volleyball courts on the beach,
Yes.
not just on, he doesn't.
Earlier you said there's a statute number
Yes,
that is associated with
correct.
requiring you to have both landing sites,
No, it's actually kind of limiting how many we can
limited.
have. Yes.
What's the maximum number
Um,
of boat landing stalls for Rockland?
For the lake in itself, I have that documented. I don't remember what it is, but we had, before we even did anything, we talked to the DNR about the concept and how many stalls we could have, because some people don't want to have this launch, I heard. Get rid of the launch. Other people say, period, like just get it off the lake entirely. Other people say we don't have enough stalls, which I've also heard saying people are parking all along Sandy Beach. So anyways, why we asked the DNR is, what can we have, just as a baseline? And they said that by statute, they would allow 15 normal, and then one additional handicap access. So what we're showing here is what we currently have to keep the same, except for the one additional handicap access. And then also that's what the DNR limited us to. And what you're saying is accurate, that it goes by the acreage of the lake. And so the lake as a whole is only supposed to have so many designated vehicle trailer spots.
I think it's 45.
45 for Rock Lake?
Yeah, and
Okay.
right now, we're at 45 if you were to remove 16.
So where I'm getting my direction from is from like the DNR staff who kind of regulate this stuff. And they counted all the launches and how many stalls they figured were at each one and kind of told us. So that's where I'm coming from.
I would recheck that map.
Yeah, well,
Based on, I mean, obviously, we're parking all the way up the road,
Right.
so, I mean, how,
well, I'll tell you. So what they did was they went to the launch on the north side, and there's so many marked stalls. I mean, that's just they're marked. We had so many marked stalls here. There's the boat launch in the mill pond that doesn't have any marked stalls, but they determined kind of in like the paved area out of the travel way and all this stuff, like how many boats and vehicles and trailers they thought could park there. And then there's two on the west side that they also kind of, they're smaller and they don't really have much marked, and they just kind of attributed what they thought was a reasonable amount of vehicle trailer parking stalls there. Well, that's what they did. And, you know, it's hard for me to go back and say, I think you undercounted or overcounted. I mean, they're the people that tell us this is what you can do, so.
It was Cheryl Holsley.
Yeah. Well, he just mentioned the lady's name, Cheryl Hosley from the DNR. She's the Housley. Okay, yeah. So she's the grant program coordinator, and when she sent that to us, I would very strongly bet it wasn't unilateral from her, that she probably talked to some other people. So that's where I'm coming from on it. And again, we're trying to balance some people saying we need more, and some people saying get rid of some. So staying where you're at seems like a good place to be to me.
Mr. Crossman?
Why don't you put the boat launch on the north end of the lake? You got that big boat parking lot on the north side of the road over there. That land was given to Lake Mills years back. And then they took to put a parking lot in. That land was supposed to stay the same. Then they took and put a parking lot for boats. One of those families still lives in Milwaukee. She is very upset that they put that parking lot in there. So why don't you just move the whole city of Lake Mills boat launch out there on the north end of the lake and forget about it down here on Sandy Beach?
I think you're referencing an existing boat launch up there. Is that what you're talking about? There already is a.
Tyranina Park.
Yeah, Tyranina Park. There's a pretty big.
There's a launch there
There's
already.
only
Yes,
two,
there is.
yeah, there's only two slots over there on the north.
Yeah.
Because you got room for 4 or 6.
Yes,
He's talking about
6 launches.
Well, the one thing I'd say to that is.
Let's back up
Yeah.
again, let's make
Sure.
clear. Tyranina Park is in the city. It has no boat launches.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have
It's
a
the
parking
north
lot.
end that we're-
You're talking about in the north end, that's a county,
That's what you said, north end.
that's a county park, not a city park.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
That's
That's
a county
true.
park.
Can't do anything with it.
But across the road, the parking that
Yes.
we got,
That's not ours either.
who does that belong to?
County, Jefferson.
Another thing that I'd say to that is if you didn't have a launch kind of somewhere in this area, you would have one on the very north end and then some on the west end. There is the one in the mill pond, but it's very restrictive. You can only get under the bridge with very small boats. So if anybody wanted to come to this side of the lake, the only place you could launch would be basically on the other side of the whole lake, either north or across to the west. So it's, I mean, yes.
So I think there's a few facts that need to be cleaned up here and brought to the table. The North End boat launch belongs to the county.
Right.
The launch belongs to the town of Lake Mills. It is maintained by the town of Lake Mills in cooperation and an intergovernmental agreement with the county, and we get along quite well there. And if you recall, launch fees were instituted on Rock Lake when the Rock Lake Improvement Association decided that we should have launch fees about late 90s. The Improvement Association manufactured the boxes, helped the city and the town put together a program. The facts are that no launch fee can exceed any fee that is collected in a state park in the state of Wisconsin. That fee remains at $7. Our fees that are collected at the North End Boat Launch in the town of Lake Mills are restricted funds used only to improve boat launches, boating safety, buoy program, other things that might attribute to the health and well-being of Rock Lake.
Well, can I ask, how does this apply to this project?
I do not believe that at any time in the life of the boat launch fee collect program in the city of Lake Mills has any of that money been restricted and or redirected towards its parks. And I think that's an important quotient in boat launch creation. If we understand what we have, how we're going to use it, how it's going to be funded, and where that money is going to go in the future. I think this is all crucial planning to what needs to be discussed in a master plan. Now, I said I wouldn't say anymore, but when you have misrepresented facts and you don't understand the accessibility of Rock Lake and or the finite part of our resource, I think you're missing the boat. We need a master plan, and where we're going from here tonight, I would like to know. Are we going to create a timeline? Is the city going to make more indiscriminate decisions without looking at public comment? I want to go back to the January meeting that you talked about last year. We were all here. We were all invited to a public meeting. We were not allowed to comment at that public meeting. And hence, the master plan went forward. It went forward within the council, but it has never been brought to the citizenry of our community. And I'm asking you now to stop and think about all the unanswered questions. And when you guys talk and you say, what about this, what about this? You're almost saying that it's a done deal. I resent that. I don't think it's a done deal. We need to go back and make another way to look at this, point by point, Indian mound by Indian mound, boat slip by boat slip, light fixture by light fixture. You haven't even looked at the restaurants, the fueling station, the bathhouses, the bathrooms. You haven't looked at any of these things. And it's impervious. It's
I would ask you to
important.
please read that report, because many of those
I
things
have.
that you're just
And
saying
it
are
had
in
no
there.
public comment, and that's my comment. No public input does not make a good plan.
Thank you for your comments.
I just feel like we've asked these questions and expressed our concerns meeting after meeting, me through emails, you all have gotten them. And it seems to be like they're picking and choosing which issues to address. And personally, I feel like we're not hearing everything. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but.
There's a lot of issues to address, and we're doing our best to address everybody's
It's
issues.
a big thing, you know, it's not, you can't.
Yeah, and when, this is why I've encouraged people to send their comments, because it's very difficult in a format like this to address every comment. I mean, if I addressed every comment, that Hope just made, we'd be here till midnight tonight.
Yeah,
So
but they're gonna-
that's why it's easier to send them in so that people can get a well thought back response.
Responded to me. I have not gotten a response from any other
I don't
person that
I
I've
can't
sent
speak to
So
that.
thank
But
you, Brandon.
I guess all I'm saying is that when people ask a question and there's information to be shared, doing best to share that, you know, and why we're doing things and when it happened.
Can't this slow down? Why is this moving so fast? The council's supposed to vote on it next Tuesday, and we have so many unanswered questions.
Well, I guess my answer to that is I take my direction from the city, so I mean, they can do whatever they like. I mean, there is, the reason why we're going at this speed is to try and meet an annual submittal deadline for a grant that would fund part of the project. That's the
Wait
reason.
a year.
What?
Wait a year.
Wait a year? Well, again,
Why not?
that's up to the city. I take my direction from the city.
Front of the cart.
Right.
Let's slow it down.
Well, again, thank you for your comment. I take my direction from the city. They can tell me to do whatever they'd like. So,
We are the city.
well, I'm not trying to minimize anybody's comments, but I got to take my direction is ultimately from the city council. So,
I understand.
and the city council, you know, they may have, I don't want to speak out of turn. So I got to take my direction from them. So they can tell me to slow down, evaluate the east side more, draw up some layouts over there. I mean, we would probably miss that grant deadline if we did this year, but I mean, that's no big deal to me. I just do whatever the city tells me to do, so,
I get that.
yeah.
Frank.
So, I guess just I probably asked this the last time, but this grant money, once it's awarded, what's the timeline to use it? Is it within a year?
I believe it is a calendar year, yeah. So we would find out in like August if we got that recreation. If we applied in June, we would find out in August if we.
And then it has to be used.
But I would say that I don't know if this is where you're going with it, but if we applied for the grant and then we decided to move it to the east side,
Right.
they might say that's not what you applied for. You know, they don't necessarily take like a concept, just say we want a boat launch somewhere here and then give you money. The one that we're on track to apply for is we need like some serious plans to get.
Well, I guess it goes against what I was going to say, because it seems like there's two issues going on. To say that we would like to apply for a grant to get free money, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's why I did that.
Is one thing.
Comes from someplace.
Yeah, is one thing, but to make a decision on the design is another, because obviously, I'm guessing we're all here because we don't like the design. And the problem is right now, it appears that the only vote that matters is the city council to approve the design. And once that's approved, now the idea is it's not just grant money. You indicated that we can't change it. Maybe we can change the direction of the parking stall, but we can't move it to the other end. That's a different story altogether. Because I think that we probably would all be on board if we said, let's apply for grant money. We have 3 years to use that money. Let's look at different options. And again, this is out of my league, but I'm not so sure that there shouldn't be a committee formed for plan approval that's appointed by the council that says, here's a smattering.
We already went down that road and we were told no, they
Right.
didn't have an appetite for that.
Well, and I think that they need to at least listen to that fact, because obviously, you know, we're talking about a major decision here, and unfortunately, the council is gonna have to take the burden of this, so they're either gonna piss everybody off that's probably in the room, or they're just gonna say, and unfortunately, I'm sorry, but, you know, it's not about being selfish about this, it's about the fact that, you know, everybody's invested in, you want to call it lake property or whatever it is, it was for a purpose and for a reason. So, you know, no different than if somebody decided to build a 4-story apartment building in front of your driveway, you really wouldn't like that either. So it's a case of, I think we all agree, let's get the free money, let's do something, but if it's based on the fact that that has to be approved, I think that, you know, I would go back to the idea, let's wait a year then, and we'll miss this deadline. So I don't know if that has to be a vote by committee. City council has to vote to say we're not going to submit until we get this ironed out, because, and again, maybe you need to still form a committee with a smattering of people that matter, and not just, you know, and again, I try to not be overzealous with the idea that you guys aren't trying to do a good job of sitting on the city council. I've done my share of trying to be the voice of everyone, but it comes a point where, you know, if I'm, you know, 7 blocks away from the lake, it doesn't quite have the same impact as somebody that is looking out at the water. It just, it doesn't. So whether it's a smattering of a few people that are affected by it, you know, whether it's the township, the Parks and Rec, residents of that, somebody needs, in my opinion, to form that committee that says, we approve this design because it goes forward. Mike's question about lighting. You know, there's ADA requirements. You can't put an ADA parking stall out there without putting lights that meet IES standards for lighting. Okay, well now somebody is going to be looking at a 30-foot light pole that has a light on it. Is it going to be bad? I don't know. I wouldn't want to look out at midnight and see a 30-foot light pole out there, because we have to light that area. Because
And all the insects that come attracted to the lights.
Yeah, so again, I'm only voicing my opinion from that perspective that, you know, again, I've got a layout of what it would be like on the east end, less impact
Let's see it.
on everything. It just doesn't seem like we looked at all those options to try to hit this deadline for the grant money, but.
Yeah, again,
I said, let's see it.
Oh, did you write that up?
He
I
said
can,
he had a rudimentary one.
whatever the city would like to do, I mean, we can, I think that everybody would probably agree that if you can get money to fund a project, that's probably good, but whether it's this year or next year, you know, like I said, I gotta take my direction from the city, and this is exactly why we're here today, is figure out what the priorities are, how important they are.
I was told.
Yes.
Short question. Do we know what the parameters are of this grant? Like
Everybody's
what's going to be required, what we need to present to get the grant, guidelines? You know, how long, if the grant's issued, how long then we have to spend that money? Do we have all that information?
Yeah, so to get the grant, the application is due June 1st. That is supposed to include permits from the DNR for the project. And to get, yes, so you have to submit a design. It's not final, but it has to be to a point where the DNR can determine what you're doing. And then from there, you have to go basically present or interview with the Wisconsin Waterways Commission in August. It's an annual meeting. It's a panel that sits and essentially decides which projects get funded or not. And then they tell you, I think it might even be later that day, whether you're going to get funded, but then you find out a little bit later how much exactly you're going to get. And then from there, I believe it's a calendar year that you have to use it. But I'm not entirely positive on that, but I would say, and again, this is the same point, is that, you know, you could submit something for the grant and kind of tweak this concept, or, you know, maybe move it slightly in that area. But if you went and tried to use that money for a design, you know, 1,000 feet away, someplace else, totally different impacts and all that, I don't think that would fly. I don't know for sure, but it doesn't seem likely, I guess.
Can you present 2 designs?
It's a good question. I don't know. Because it probably would go back to the permitting aspect of it, because you would have to get either design permitted then. So I'd have to look into that. I mean, it'd be more upfront investment from the city to get 2 designs to a point where you can get permits.
So here's your.
Hey, I'm going to piggyback on Phil's question about the grant proposal. So, this has already been thrown out and I didn't hear it, but the grant proposal that you're putting in is specifically for this phase. As I understand it, there's a number of phases to this project. So
Correct. Just.
The grant proposal is specific to just this phase. Correct?
It's specific to this phase, but also specific to a boat launch. It's a recreational boating facilities grant, so it can only be used for things associated with lake access, essentially.
Looking at the plan, I don't disagree with it, but the philosophy behind moving the boat launch over there, could it be to protect your shorelines from high expanding into the wetlands? Is that why the launch is being moved? No one has really talked about just leaving it where it's at, move it east, move it west. Last meeting there was I think it was 100 feet from the boat launch that the closest pier needed to be, and now the Reynolds need to move their pier? Is that what that meant?
No.
Is there a certain distance that one has to be, a pier has to be from the boat launch?
I don't believe so, no. I'm not sure where that 100-foot thing came from. And the reason, I guess, going back to the master plan thing and why not leaving it in the center is because the thought was that, again, the highest and best use of the park space for people's enjoyment would be to have a big cohesive beach space. So that's why we aren't talking about just leaving it where it is, I guess.
It's worked for 56 years since I've been going there.
I mean, I guess, thank you. That's your opinion. Some people would say that it doesn't work very well. It's queues, it's only one slip, you know, so. I mean, can you physically launch a boat? Absolutely. It's worked for 50 years,
Yeah,
but.
one slip and 16 spaces. I mean, how many? That seems fine for me. I mean.
So you're saying you
have
think we
2.
should have one slip here?
So you need one slip for 8 boats?
Well, so you're saying we need less capacity, and other people are talking about times when people need to come off the lake because of storms. So this is, again, we're hitting on where you need trying to balance, you know.
You're talking short periods of time, though.
I understand that, but it seemed very important to the gentleman behind you that we have that capacity, so it's a balancing act.
Old trailers parked along Old Sandy Beach Road after they unloaded, like they do now in the summer. I mean, I think you ought to shut that off. The city ought to shut off.
Yeah, that won't
Parking your
change.
car
This
in your
won't change
boat
any of that.
launch. You know, trailers sitting there in the road. It's tough to get through them with 2 cars in
Sure.
a boat. Trailers sitting there.
Yeah.
If they rent one sells slots on float, shut them off.
I understand what you're saying. That's a city parking code enforcement situation that,
That's what the city ought to think about.
yeah.
No more trailers being set along the street like they do, all the way up to the bowling alley.
Sure.
Are you anticipating more traffic into that area, vehicles coming down Sandy Beach Road or less? That's interesting. I live on Sandy Beach Road.
Yeah.
And I'm the last house on the end. And they park all the way up, they fill that whole city park, their parking lot.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, is there gonna be more, are we looking at more people coming down to the beach? If we build a restaurant, are we gonna build like a event center above it too, and things like that. I mean,
Yeah, that's future stuff. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, in the short term, we're not really changing a whole lot about Sandy Beach other than where the boat launch is, and the number of parking stalls are stay the same. You know, I don't know if,
You're changing a lot.
well, hold on, just, you know, in terms of creating demand for that space, you know, it's subjective in my part, but the only improvement, if you will, is that you're having a nicer boat launch. So maybe people would like that and come there more versus, say, the one on the north side. I don't, it's hard to say.
The city of Madison, they were all shut down, and there was no wake, so they all came out here. So
Oh.
I get why it was really busy last year.
Yeah.
It was really busy.
Yeah, and again, that's in the short run. I mean, it's hard for me to say in the long run because so much of what could happen there is yet to be determined. All we have is concepts.
By taking up some of the old parking lot with your new parking lot for the boats, the triathlon won't be held here because they won't have room for the parking lot anymore.
Well, they actually have more parking spaces. In terms of if you're talking physical space needed to, I don't know, house a whole bunch of bikes and stuff like that, you know, the city could potentially make part of the boat launch available. I don't know. I mean, there's things that we could do to make that happen still, but I'm going to go with him. He has.
So, I guess what scares me, this meeting, we're just talking about the boat launch reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And what scares me is what's going to bleed into the next phase, which maybe is the restaurant or the community center or the trailer relocation. What defines the scope of each one of these? I mean, it just seems like it's kind of like, well, we're talking about the boat launch, and then, well, some of this stuff is going to be after that. Well, is it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3?
So we had a phasing map, and again, these are concepts. So, but you got to start somewhere.
Right.
I mean, you can't poof just have all the details. So we're trying to start someplace. So I mean, as you can see here, the phasing would go boat launch, redo part of the parking lot. The reason why is because a large stormwater treatment device would be part of that, so that you could then build the rest of the parking lot and have that basin already there. I mean, the way it's laid out is then the restaurant would be built next, and then the beach section would go third, arrow after that, I guess.
So that was in the January
Correct.
16, 2018 study, yeah, 96 page?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brandon, see, if the boat launch goes, that's why that's the first phase. Because if you put the boat launch in, instead of starting with the restaurant, if you put the boat launch in, then you have to do the rest with the parking. You can't leave a boat launch down there in a green space without a road. I think that's why the boat launch went in first, because then that'll be down there. Now they have to get a way to get people down there to park, and that leads to the parking lot.
I don't know if I necessarily agree
Yeah,
with that.
section 1A is.
Yeah,
is
the
all part of
boat
parking lot
launch-
Also.
The
They
boat
could've
launch could
started
be
with the
very
restaurant.
standalone. The boat launch doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the restaurant. I mean, if the city could build the boat launch and make the restaurant how it is for 30 years if they wanted to. I mean, that's an option. Yes, you've been waiting patiently.
So in January 2018, there was, the entire concept was approved, is that the right, or was?
Shown.
Was
It was presented, yeah.
presented. And
With no input.
has there been input on the entire concept? Have
Not
the
till
citizens of
January
Lake-
Excuse me.
January 2019, we were allowed to say something.
Our school district did a really great job of systematically soliciting citizen input when they were going to do some major changes. Is there some reason that something like that can't be done for a project like this for Sandy Beach?
We asked for that.
We asked for that, and they said they didn't have an appetite.
Yeah,
So I do want to just correct a couple things. I believe this presentation is going to be available, but there was a number of times, and if people don't feel like there's enough public input, that is certainly your way to. I just want to point out that this was available at, I believe, 4 different council meetings going back to 2016. They were talking about evaluating the restaurant. What do you want to do there? Let's see. January, the city met with that advisory committee, Rock Lake Management Plan. And then January 16, 2018, it was presented, but then there wasn't anything necessarily done there, like they were saying. It wasn't voted, we will go forward with this concept.
Okay, but the suggestion is that a citizen who's interested in Sandy Beach and changes to Sandy Beach would have needed to attend these city council meetings to learn about it, but would not have been able to express any opinions. Is that true?
I believe that you can always
January
comment
2018.
at the city council
No,
meetings.
January 2018, we were told this is just to be shown to the council, and there was no public comment.
It was a workshop, they called it a workshop.
Okay, sure.
And I don't know how realistic it is, though, for your average citizen to be attending these meetings to get this information. It just seems like it could maybe be done a little bit better, so that, you know, the citizens of Lake Mills have a beach that they want.
Yeah, thank you for your comment.
And I know who you report to and what you have to do, but I think we should give the city council some idea of our sense of support for this. And right now, it sounds like we want more time.
Right.
And if you got a vote in 3 weeks, hear that we're saying we want more time. We hear everybody loves it, everybody loves it. I'm not hearing anybody here say, let's go with it, you know.
Right.
I'm on my horse, let's go with it. What I'm hearing is buy more time, and to your point, if the money is not affected and they're allowed to make tweaks,
Well, to this
east or
concept.
west or whatever you want to do with it, because the cost will probably be the same or close, why don't we say, take more time, go ahead, go for the funding, as long as it doesn't lock us in.
Well, we would have to wait on the funding if you wanted to say, many people have suggested to the east side. If you wanted to evaluate that, we would certainly miss that June 1st deadline, which would push you back a year. And that's certainly doable. I'm just outlining what it means, I guess.
Would you rather have everybody on board? You know, 6
Yeah.
months from now, a year from now?
Well,
then-
everyone is not going to be on board on everything.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, obviously, if we could have everybody on board, that'd be great. The more people, the better. Like you said, I don't think you're ever gonna make everybody happy. But
And I understand, but it just seems like, you know, we're racing against the wind here, and we don't have to.
You know, we get people telling us we're going too slow. And they're actually
Are they here?
tax-paying citizens.
Is there anybody here
Doesn't matter.
saying that?
We always get the squeaky wheels.
Yeah, we've got some here.
Do it.
You
love it, Roger?
A real quick comment to your comment, and I can attest to this because my parents live on a lake. They have a lot of the same issues about view and not this lake, but it's a very, there's a reason you bought that property. There's a reason you pay the taxes for that property because it's the beauty, it's the access, it's the whole ambiance. No one's arguing that. Most of us don't have that opportunity. I don't look at the lake from my porch. I walk around to the lake, I bike to the lake, whatever. But when I'm saying everybody's here is against it, well, everybody here, most of you that are here have a very vested interest. You're changing your reality. You don't want a boat in front of you. I understand all that. I totally understand that. But the rest of us, at least myself, being a citizen of the Lake Mills for 20-some years and being on the Parks Board, we're saying, what is the greater good for all? What is going to be the best for all? Kids from 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And I can understand your interest of not wanting something to change in your front yard or to move it to the other side of the street because that won't affect me, it'll affect them. If we do that, I can nearly guarantee those people that are on the east side are going to be down here saying, you can't do that, why don't you put it on the west?
I hear you.
Can't argue that at all.
But do you love what's going on? Do you support, let's slow it down?
What's your definition of slow? Right now, this is going on for minimum 4 years, 5. As far as the talking about it, the fact that Sandy Beach the restaurant has to be done, something done with it, because it's falling down, it's not the code. also the issue.
So why didn't we start with the restaurant
Yeah,
replacement?
that's-
If, you know, that's what facilitated all
That
that.
could totally be true, and the other issue.
And then it all became grandiose.
It did.
That
And I
I
did it.
not argue with. The other issue is that, to my understanding, the infrastructure of the mobile home park has to be done. You know, there's effluent maybe going into the lake, there's, you know, who knows what. So that has to be done. So I think that was one of the reasons why, if that, then let's look at this. If this has to be
But
done,
that's the last phase of the projects. That's
well,
number
it's
6
expensive
or
phase
7.
also. But again, and go back again, I try to use the one that's on the mill pond for my little boat, because it's a lot easier. Don't have to go down and deal with all the anger, the rush that you're talking about, but sometimes that's not accessible because of the lake changes. But to answer your question,
He's on the Parks Board.
we could maybe change the progression of the different phases. You know, do you go to the restaurant first? But I think you have a lot of people that are voters, both in the city that pay our launch fee and from out of the city, that would really, really appreciate having an improved boat launch. And then with all this, they'll be buying more stuff in Lake Mills, and they'll be doing whatever, is the theory. But and also the issue of the parking on the street. And I live on Pinnacle, which is what, 3/4 mile away, and people during the June Ironman, they're parked in, I swear to God, a couple of years they parked in my driveway. But I got a 3-thing driveway. They go, well, that's rude, but what the heck? But it's one time a year.
Sandy Beach is every weekend.
Yeah, and Sandy Beach is every weekend, so there's lots of things to do. But when we say that everybody here is against it, I'm not against it, but I do applaud the process.
There we go. Good.
Brandon?
Yeah.
You were saying you take direction from the city, and obviously, a lot of us have a lot of issues. Can I hear what the city staff or council has to say on this, or where we can go from here, or how we start something? I know we've been talking to Brandon all night. What are you planning to? Sorry.
Council's over there.
Well, I said city staff
Well,
too.
this is not a posted meeting, so we cannot.
You can
Vicky.
speak.
Vicky, you can.
Vicky, you will let Vicky talk. She knows what she can say and what she can't say. Can you go back? Well, I'm not an attorney, she is.
Can you go back to the
There's some-
slide that has all the different phases?
The sections.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Section 4, is that where the cabins were?
Yes.
Yep.
Since we're not going to do the cabins, I realize you did section 1A where it is, because in the planning process, the cabins were going to be in section 4. But would it be that impossible to flip section 1A and put it where section 4 is?
We've been, like everybody's been saying, we haven't tried to draw that in, compare the costs, you know,
What
is
is
it
the cost?
impossible? No, I can't say it's impossible.
It's not impossible, but it's difficult. When you remember the first part, when we looked at the cabins, we already had problems with how the road was going in and how we were slotting it in and how we were doing the stormwater. And you can't run a road straight in and out and so you can't ramp them up like you would on the other end and make it easier to get in and out with a boat. And then you look at the distance that you're coming off the road and getting to the lake and how you're gonna make that boat park and drive through the existing area. So while it's not impossible, it was the least viable of the options that we looked at.
Because you still have all the traffic going through the park then, with all the boats.
And I mean, again, I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, I haven't been able to see it, but somebody drew something up. But, you know, let me just do a quick thing here. So we modified this concept, right? So now this parking lot comes all the way out to here. So if you take that space, this rectangle I'm drawing, and you put this up here, now you're like talking like this. You know, it starts to eat into the other concepts, and you can adjust everything, but you know, there was a bigger space available here than here. And then this is a big hill.
No, it looks the same.
This is a big hill.
There are a lot of oak trees in that area.
Please don't take the blue as what we're currently doing. Remember, we're extending this out to about here right now. So, and there's some hills and some big trees over there, and yeah, I mean, like I said, balance. If we come with the next design over in stage 4, and we're gonna say we're cutting down 1,500-year-old oak trees, we might have 15 people here screaming about that too. So
You already have a road that goes through there. I mean, I guess I would like to say, why can't you just put something rudimentary down on paper and show us?
sure. Again, I take my direction from the city, so I can't just go. I mean, if they want to tell me to do that, I can certainly do that.
Doesn't just.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing because how many iterations and spaces? I mean, you know, we could provide 12 different options if we wanted, but somebody's got to.
Pay for
Not trying to ask gritty. They got to pay for it, and that's time and. So, you know, if you go through 10 iterations of an $800,000 project, how much are you going to pay in engineering because you went through 10 different iterations? And then do we have to have a public hearing on each different iteration, and how many public hearings? And then it becomes a spiral. So you got to start someplace. So we're starting someplace. This was the concept that came out of that master plan. We're hearing everybody's comments.
One concept. You have one concept.
We actually have two concepts. I mean, we had this area. And then we went to the first one, and everybody said, this is what we don't like about that design. Here's some things you can do to improve this kind of area. And we did that, and now we're back here. And so that's...
So why don't we try another area?
Well, again, that's possible, but it's not up to me.
When does the council vote on this?
16th.
Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday?
But I'm not hearing that has to be done from our folks up front here.
Could be tabled.
It has to be
It
done?
does not have to be done on Tuesday. That's what you said, right?
How does
Don't
that
we
happen?
have until the first meeting in the next month?
No, we evaluated that. If you remember, we have to have those permits submitted by a certain date.
Well,
So if we don't do it on the 16th, it will slide to next year.
well, I think it should be slowed down.
Well, I want to clarify, at least the recreational boating facilities grant would slide to next year. We have already applied for one grant. They're a little bit more conceptual, and I don't know for sure whether, if, say, we got that grant, if they would allow us to come back and say we moved it to the east side, and they would still give us whatever money.
They probably have a dollar amount they'd have to deal with, I would think.
Yeah,
And we don't know.
I don't know the answer to that. If that may be possible, that if we get the one that we already applied for, that they may allow us to move that around as long as we're still providing a boat launch facility.
Would you be able to know that by the vote next week? Or is that too
I can
short?
make some calls. Just get the best info I can. I don't know if I would for sure or not. And so that was the federal grant program, sport fish restoration, and we wouldn't even find out if we got that or not, potentially until as late as February 2020.
Yeah.
Because it's the federal government, it takes a while. So,
So Brandon, I think the message is that you do not have a consensus here. You do not have a consensus of public support. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Yes.
There is not a consensus here. I think there is a call for more planning.
okay.
And I guess if that means that we have to start a public process, a petition process, or a number of focus groups to work through these issues on our own without support from an engineering firm, then I think that's what needs to happen. Because I think we are in an impasse here. And if the council makes this application, I think they are putting the cart in front of the horse. I don't think we're anywhere near ready to apply for a boating waterways grant.
Well,
The support is not there.
Again, I appreciate your comments. I would say though that, municipalities, federal
They can make their own
government,
decisions.
they don't operate on complete consensus.
I understand.
So, why a lot of people here might be against it, maybe if it was put to a citywide vote, it would go through, who knows?
That'd be very interesting too.
It would be, yeah.
Well, why don't
I'm not saying that that should happen.
Right, and we're not against it, just alternatives to consider.
Yep, sure, and again, I can certainly, anybody can certainly put those together if that's the direction that the city gives us.
And there's so many ifs, you know.
Well, again, we gotta start someplace, and so we're trying to refine the details through situations like this, you know,
Then the
without
voting
just
is-
charging ahead and
the
telling you
voting
this is what you're
coming
getting.
up so fast, that's
And one of the issues that you have to deal with there is that you're applying for the grant to be able to do that work.
Mhm.
It's not like you do all the work and then you get a grant.
Is the grant available next year?
Yes, it's available again next year.
Well, then pass it out.
Hey, seems pretty
Work on
academic.
the restaurant.
secondary.
Work on the restaurant.
We're talking about redoing Sandy Beach for the next 30 years, 40, 50 years. Branch man. Sorry.
Well, if I heard correctly, that the trailer park potentially is dumping effluent in, which is why our E. coli levels on the beach,
I don't know
shut the
about
beach down
I don't-
multiple times.
I don't know
No,
about
I
that.
just said that's complete conjecture. I have no.
When I say that the utilities there are in bad shape, they're meaning they're old. Some of the sanitary pipes may be leaking like at the joints, but usually what that means is that the water is going in, not out, that the groundwater is coming in. And they're so far from we don't know for sure, but I don't think that.
We could camera that, find that out.
Yeah, but even if they are leaking for the sewage to get from the trailer park, you know, all the way out to the lake is.
It was an issue that I had debated once before, and we checked the E. coli, and from what I understand is that it wasn't the same type. It was goose.
And the other thing.
We were concerned about either failing septic tanks or leaking sanitary sewers.
The other thing is the water system in there is, there's one section that's it's okay. It's, you know, a little bit older, but one of the sections, the lower section closer to the lake is, basically a daisy chain that as they kept adding trailers, they just kept running a 1-inch pipe in a spiral basically. And, it's just not a very good setup. And the city is working to reduce their water loss through their system, and situations like that is a prime, I guess, suspect about where they're losing water. You know, just leaking out. I guess it seems like there's no more questions. We've heard a lot. It's been a nice long meeting. So thanks everybody for coming, and we'll wrap it up. And I guess maybe we'll see you at City Council next week. I don't know. Thanks everybody.